What's going on, guys? Today's video is a little different. If you follow my channel for a while, you've probably seen some of the carpentry projects that I do, but with recently getting back into collecting Pokemon cards, I thought that I would need somewhere to store them. They were pretty much just kind of everywhere. All of my binders just on the floor, on the mantle, all over my desk, all over my wife's desk. So I wanted to do something that was really cool and would look really good and stand out. And this is pretty much what I came up with. The images you're seeing here obviously are the finished product, but I wanted to go through and show everybody how I made this. That way, if you might have the tools and the time to do it, maybe you can make your own to display your Pokemon card collection. All right, so let's go ahead and jump right into it. So I had to go to Lowe's and obviously get the supplies that I need to build this. And I picked up one of these edge glued tabletops. This one is 12 inches by 72 inches and they're about 22 bucks. So not too expensive. They're already finished and sanded, although I will knock it down a little bit more. But yeah, I want to cut this down. I want the shelf to be 5 feet. So basically I have to go through and measure this out and it's going to end up being 58.5 inches. So 58.5 because minus an inch and a half for the edges that I'm going to put on there. That would make it exactly 5 feet at 60 inches. So this nifty little tool that you see me clipping on here is just a straight edge. It's made out of aluminum and it clamps on with C-clamps, just helps you keep your tools straight. So I'm going to be cutting this with a circle saw at the 58.5 inch mark. So we'll chop it off real quick. And there you have it. Now the shelf top is the correct length. And then obviously with cutting something like that, you want to knock the little burrs and splinters off the edge just so you get a nice flush fit with whatever you're putting on it. So I knew as soon as the idea for the shelf popped into my head that I wanted some nice ambient lighting underneath of it. So I had to cut out a channel, which fortunately I have a palm router here and a routing bit that does cut channels. So what I'm doing here is I just had to measure from the back of the board to exactly where I wanted the channel to be, which is about an inch away from the back of the board. Now I have a 5/16 inch channel routing bit. Unfortunately, I had to do 2 passes with it because I needed the channel to be wider than 5/16 because the light strip was actually 6/16 or 3/8 of an inch. So I've got my little straight edge set up and this is the second pass that I did to widen the channel. Unfortunately, my camera decided it wanted to autofocus out of the shot, so we're just getting the second pass. But regardless, the channel ends up being about a 1/2 inch wide and that is perfect. The lights will fit right in there. So the board is cut down to size and I've routed out the channel for the lighting. And now I'm just going to do a few passes with my orbital sander. I'm going to start with 120 grit, then move up to 240 and finally do a pass with 320. That way the shelf top is nice and smooth and ready for paint. So for paint, I decided to go with white for the shelf top and I wanted to use a rattle can. So if you use a rattle can on wood like this and you only do like 1, maybe 2 passes, because the paint is so thin when it comes out of the can, you can actually really see the wood grain through the paint pretty nicely. So I decided to do the rattle can. Plus it's just quick and easy and sitting in the sun, the stuff dries to the touch in about 20 minutes. So after that 20-minute wait, I went ahead and took the shelf top into the garage and it's time to cut out the trim pieces that are going to go around the shelf. And they were 11 and 15/16 on the sides and the front one was exactly 60 inches long. So right on the money where I needed it to be. So now that all my trim pieces are cut, I'm just test fitting them right now to make sure I didn't screw up royally and have to run back to Lowe's and get another piece of trim. But it looks like I did great. 11 and 15/16. Even though the board's supposed to be 12 inches, it's never exactly what they say it is. So now I'm ready to attach the first trim piece. I'm going to go ahead and put a little tiny bead of Type Bond wood glue on here, and that's just for some extra strengthening power. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit it with my pin nailer. Just using like 1.5 brad nails and just spaced a couple inches apart, and that'll give it a very good hold for a long time. So I got the one side down, move on to the other side, also 11 and 15/16 of an inch as it should be, but you never know with wood from Lowe's. And last but not least, the front trim piece. This is the long one, so it can get a little tricky doing it by yourself, but just kind of plan ahead if you plan on doing this and make sure you've got an idea in your head of how you're going to get this done. Otherwise, you might put a nail in the wrong spot and then everything is just a disaster after that. You could pull it out and do it again, but best to not make mistakes the first time around when you're working with wood, because you can always take it off, but you can't put it back. So now that the trim pieces are on, the next step was to install the lighting, and this is just one of those cheap little LED lighting strips that I got from Walmart. They're pretty cheap. This one was like 20 bucks. It's 25 feet of lights, and you can cut it at certain points to make it exactly how long you need it to be. And it also comes with a couple of little extenders, or I don't know what you would call them, but you can actually clip them on and into another pair of lights, and it keeps the electricity flowing. So it's just like a little jumper. So it's actually not a bad deal. So if I ever want to use these again, I can buy the cheap one, the 10-foot kit, and then attach those and keep going with whatever I had left over from this. So yeah, put the lights in right into the channel, fit super great, turn them on, pretty colors everywhere. So now that the lights are installed in the channel, I can go ahead and attach the brackets. They're going to attach the shelf to the wall. Got these from Lowe's also, and I went with white because they match the other furniture that is in the basement of my house. My wife's not super happy that I put a Pokemon themed shelf in our basement. She says that she's in charge of home decor, but I pay half the mortgage, so I think I can get this one. So for this, I'm just using a speed square to make sure that the bracket is nice and squared up with the shelf. And then I use a board on the back of the shelf just to act as the wall, so I can make sure that these brackets are nice and flush with the edge of the shelf. Once they're squared up and flush with the back of the shelf, I can go ahead and screw them down, and then I'll do the other two. At this point during the day, one of my dogs was really ready to play because I've been hanging out in the garage all day, and this dog will do anything for you to throw him a ball. So naturally I had to take a little break and play with Rocket. Rocket is a 3-year-old Belgian Malinois. He is one of my dogs. I also have a German Shepherd, but Rocket will chase a ball until his heart explodes. So we have to limit it. So I threw the ball for him a few times, and then it was back to work. And back to work, I mean over to my computer. So the graphic you saw on the front of the shelf from the beginning of the video, I actually made that. I took a whole lot of the Pokemon that I could find, and I compressed them down into a 90-inch image. It's 90 inches long and 3.5 inches, I believe it was, wide. And this was so it would fit nicely onto the face of the wood. I didn't want to just leave it normal. I wanted to do something really cool with it to make it actually Pokemon themed. So that's what I ended up doing. And I made that graphic in Adobe Photoshop, and I used my Cricut to cut out 11 different 9-inch rectangles of the graphic, and I seamed them together the best I could. If you get really close to it, you can see the seams, but from far away, it is not bad at all. And what you see me doing in this clip here is I'm marking out the length of each sticker so I know exactly where one should end and the next should begin. Made it a lot easier to put them on rather than just winging it. Most of them are 9 inches long, but I did cut the middle one short because I didn't want to cut running through the Pokemon logo. So the middle one is actually only 4 inches. So after getting all my markings and everything on the trim pieces, it was time for the final part of the project, which was applying the decals. So I made all these decals, 11 of them in total. This did take me quite a while to do, but it was well worth it. The final product looks absolutely amazing. And basically what I did was I went back with a squeegee as I laid them down, and I was just making sure to get them nice and stuck to that trim piece, using the squeegee every step of the way. As for wrapping it over the top of it, I just pulled it nice and tight and also used the squeegee to do that as well. Cutting it off to make sure it was flush with the trim pieces, I just used a very fine X-Acto blade to go in the gap that was there between the trim piece and the shelf top. Just cutting everything off like super precisely, making sure I didn't mess up the decal, and then going back with the squeegee, squeezing out any air bubbles, anything like that, so I could make it perfect. And then we have the final product. So there you have it, start to finish. That is how I made my custom Pokemon display shelf. I'm sure you might have noticed on the shelf in the pictures, there is a bunch of unopened cards up there. Those are slated for future card opening YouTube videos. I've currently got 60 packs of Scarlet and Violet 151. I've got a booster display of Paradox Rift, and I'm also waiting on 2 booster displays of Scarlet and Violet, the original ones from that Scarlet and Violet series. So those are all slated for future videos while I wait for some other stuff to come in. But in the meantime, I had to get all of my stuff into one place so I can look at it and look at how pretty it is. As always, guys, if you like the video, please don't forget to leave a thumbs up. If you have any questions about how I did this, or you need further detail, or you just want to say something or talk about something, leave it in the comments below. I do try to respond to every single one that I possibly can. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for old school RuneScape and Pokemon card content. With that, I think I'm going to call it quits for this one. Once again, thank you for watching. I will see you guys on the next one. Take it easy.